This is not my artwork. I'm using it with the paleoanthropology and the teaching of paleoanthropology that is my work. I do also make sure that I have links to people's artwork, though I am in the process of switching things from the link tree to the website. So that you can get access to this artwork because it is absolutely beautiful artwork and people should have access to it. So it is Tom Borkland, which is the name up there behind me, but I don't think it has umlauts on Twitter and Insta for, English reasons, but it's pretty cool. No, the Neanderthals did not hunt and eat human beings. There's no evidence of violence between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. All evidence shows that we instead bred with them. We're more likely as a species to fuck things that we find unusual than we are to kill things that we find unusual. We like things that look different. We like things that are new, that are curious, that seem a little bit different, right? Even today, we see that in things like opposites don't, or opposites attract, right? We look for somebody who is different from us in a mate. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a teenager or not. I think that Tom Borkland's art has a wide variety of different environments. I like this one because of the membrane that you can see on the kill. Having grown up backwoods and off grid, I've done plenty of skinning, and it's not something that a lot of people understand, is that there's this membrane between the musculature and the skin, and that you can almost just pull that membrane off. And sometimes you'll get a little slice of your knife to kind of pull that back, and you just peel it back. And you can see this membrane across the musculature of this being, or of the deer. So we're going to go ahead and turn on to sub-only chats as we get going. I will turn on for questions later. I'm going to go through one section, which will be the section of art. And then I'm going to go through this section of jewelry. But in between the two, I'm going to open it up for questions so that everybody gets a chance to answer the questions. Unfortunately, it can get very trolly in here. It's very hard for my moderators to try and keep track of. We've tried for several months. We found that this is our easiest way for everybody involved. And so I'm going to go ahead and keep the comments off for the most part. I will turn them back on again so that you can ask questions. Many questions are vital. And I believe that education, I'm here to give education. And I believe that a vital part of education is actually, I'm just going to turn off comments completely because it just makes it easier for me to be able to see and not have distractions, because I get distracted really easily. I am a squirrel person. So I'm a Widda. A Widda is an indigenous scientist. The terminology is Celtic indigenous. It is the feminine half of the druid. Wid means knowledge and da means feminine. Just like Drew means oak and Wid means knowledge. So oak knowledge versus feminine knowledge. Hi over in YouTube. There are beautiful people. Mwah. Hi, Birdie. So if you would like to comment, you're more than welcome to go over to YouTube. It kind of is a step removed and it kind of keeps down our trolls. Plus, it's not in my screen, so I don't see it automatically all the time. I am originally and at heart Turtle Island Indigenous. That's how I was raised. But I also studied many of my other indigeneities, and have put a lot of effort into the indigeneities in Europe, because you don't walk around with this skin and not get told plenty of times, white girl, stop appropriating culture. So trying to find culture that nobody could say I was appropriating was a big thing as a teenager for me, being in the communities that I was in. And so I studied a lot of indigenous roots within Europe so that I could figure out how to blend all of my indigenous roots and make sure that I was doing the best that I could for my relatives. One of the things that's important to me is education. And I don't believe that education should be kept behind a $40,000 a year paywall. And I don't believe it should be gate kept with really big language. It's very hard for people to understand. I learned to read in anthropology, archaeology texts, and history texts written by Black and Indigenous authors around a campfire. That's how my mama taught me to read. And I have a hard time reading these texts, even with 2 degrees. So I try to make sure that education is not only accessible financially, but education is accessible and comprehensive. The ability to hear what is being said, because it's not being said in ways to try and kind of block you, right? Thank you so much. And so I come on TikTok and do that on TikTok. This is my platform to do that on. This is the room that TikTok gives me. We treat it as a lecture hall around here. And right now we're working on a focus on Neanderthals. We started with Homo erectus. We talked about some of the species Homo erectus went into. We talked about how important it is to return to these animistic and indigenous intentions that live in concert with the planet, because these intentions and these life ways and practices might actually stop the destruction that we're causing, and might actually make our species viable for a little longer, right? And now we're into Neanderthals. And we started with Neanderthals with the fact of the different DNAs within Neanderthals, and the fact that we can see other species within the Neanderthals, and we can see the breeding of Neanderthals and Homo sapien, and the Neanderthals and Denisovian, and Neanderthals and other species. And that there's possibilities of more species out there still. And we also talked about things like the Y chromosome that disappeared with the Neanderthal DNA, was replaced early on by Denisovian Y DNA, and afterwards by by sapien Y DNA, and how it's disappearing within us. But that doesn't mean males, penis possessing people, are disappearing. It just means that that specific allele and chromosome is disappearing. And we also talked about the fact that Neanderthals have language. Neanderthals not only have language in, we found a hyoid bone. We can see the patterns of language at the base of their skull, where the brain kind of presses and imprints. And we can see it in their chest capacity and their lung capacity, and the way these intermingled parts work to express air through the voice box, like I'm doing now for long periods of time, which you must have all of these parts to be able to talk like this, right? And we talked about how we can also see in their auditory that they were able to hear on the same levels that we were. And now we've headed into art and jewelry. Now we've been discussing pretty much the same art and jewelry this entire time, and we're going to continue to discuss the same art and jewelry. I'm just going to give you some walkthroughs and some feels, and I encourage you to see broader, to go deeper, to search more. Okay, I give the base. I encourage you to use that beautiful, innate, creative brain that you have to find more with that base. And so with that, I'm going to show you a few pictures, and then I'm going to kind of invite you into a thought process. I have these pictures up on my laptop. Haven't figured out quite yet how to get this to where I can get them all behind and also on YouTube, as I am streaming in both places. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this over. One thing that is important to note is that art comes about, double checking to make sure that you on YouTube can see this right, that art comes about when we see, maybe, sorry, double checking to make sure that all can access it right. Is it too, it's going to be a little bit, I know, I'm sorry. Art comes about when we see our brain development starting and changing. Neanderthals actually have a larger brain capacity than we have. But as our brain capacity changes, not capacity, but our brain changes and its waves change, we see this development of art and burial. We see these things start at about 65,000 years ago in sapiens and Neanderthals, 65,000 years ago in sapiens and Neanderthals, and much, much earlier in Naledi, before Naledi die out. This here is a cave art that is one of the most famous ones. My love of this one, hold on, I'm going to try and get it out a little bit. There we go. My love of this one is that it not only shows that the art that the Neanderthals are creating within this, but it also shows the cave walls itself. So as you can see, these cave walls have this wild variation of color here, right? You can see that it's going from like this white to this deep kind of dark rust almost, right? Sorry, YouTube. And you can see in this variation, and then in this change of the stone itself, the way that the stone comes down from the wall, the way that the stone kind of dips in, that there is this wild variety of imagination inducing expanse of color that in firelight is going to flicker in ways that's going to bring forth the ability to see new things, ideas, right? This is a really famous one, and this one actually, I have a picture somewhere, I think on here, and I'll try and pull it up on YouTube where it shows what this is a little bit more close up. But this here is a ladder, or that's what they call it, and it comes down here and a little bit further and comes up, and then this is a series of dots, and it's a series of lines. It's 4 lines of dots, and then there's 2 extra lines here and here as it turns. Down here is a kind of buffalo, and up here is kind of a pig. And over here is what looks to be a human, and a pole. It has a curving over here. It has this wrapping of something around. There's kneeling. There's this extra space here. This has been thought of as a few different things. I like what was mentioned the other day about a birthing chair. It very much looks like that in a lot of ways. It could also be a throne or a seat, as it's been described as. There's a couple of different ways that it could be described. But these are things that are coming out of the wall. And so you start to bring them into this space, right? If you look at this, you can see where this kind of is a shadow here. And this is like the stone coming out, and then this comes up from it. When you're sitting in these spaces, you're going to see these beautiful things starting to really pop. You can see this horse kind of right here. You can see more lines of dots in these different spaces. This is another, and to me, extremely significant cave art. And the significance in this cave art is the human here with bow and arrow. Now, we're all human because we're all Homo, so we don't know if that's a Neanderthal with a bow and arrow or a sapien with a bow and arrow. We don't believe really that Neanderthals really did a whole lot of bow and arrow, so it might be sapien, but that's evidence of us hunting together or seeing sapiens while hunting. And there's a lot more evidence of us hunting together and living in bands. So it's quite possible these are hunting partners, right? But this is very obviously a human with a bow and an arrow. And this here almost looks like a recurve bow to me. It's really interesting in its design and its shape. Over here, you see what looks like the arrows having hit animals, right? This is record of a hunt. This is a documented hunt. Down here almost looks like somebody riding an animal, and over here almost looks like somebody riding an animal. But this is the document of a hunt. And this is, again, on this cave wall where you can see these variations of color that are also going to play with the art that is put in here. This is what some of these caves look like on the interior. This I'm pretty sure is the first one that we looked at, is another part of that first one. And as you look at it, you can see that there's like these billowing spaces in part of it that look almost like clouds billowing in the sky. There's these spaces that look like as much of a part of the life that you understand as being life as anything else. And so it's kind of like being within the earth itself, or being within the mother as a living being itself. And you can also see where these billowing cloud areas are really going to give us that like appearance that you're like outside as the firelight is flickering. So that gets us into jewelry. And so I'm going to go ahead and switch us back into a couple more points with this first before we get into jewelry. 1 second. Let me flip this back around and maybe pull my big old face out of it. So what I want you to do before we go into jewelry, I want to talk with you about what this in itself can symbolize and mean, and you and this. First, I want you to picture these things that we saw. Caves that the cave themselves is artwork, is design, right? Before we add anything to them, we're looking at something that's designed by the Mother Earth itself, has this intense variation of color and depth, and that any firelight is going to bring out into this almost breathing, living sphere. Okay. In this time period, you're really going to understand it as a breathing, living sphere. It's not until extremely recent, the last couple of 100 years, really, in the vast majority of spaces, that we don't understand the earth as a breathing, living being in and of itself. And so the Neanderthals are really seeing this as this breathing, living being that they're living within at this point. It's giving them shelter. This is your mother. This is the earth, right? This is what gives us life. This is the biome that we live in, that we were created to be a part of, because by being a part of this biome and tending in this biome, like every other being on this planet, we are a part. We are a cog in the clock. We are the tree roots that hold the soil together while the earth is provided air by the branches and the leaves that reach up to the sun, right? We are a part of the biome. And our place and our position in that biome is not to be locusts like we seem to think it is right now, but to tend and to care, not just for the earth itself, but for everything within the earth, including ourselves. And so Neanderthals being created with this thought process, being created by the earth itself, just like everything else is created within this evolutionary balance that we all bring each other, right? You see that Neanderthal is a part of this. They're not separate from it. So, living in this cave and in this firelight, you're seeing the patterns of the earth singing, breathing, being a part of you, right? And this is where you see that start of art play, because what you see is the visions that you're played out on the wall starting to come to life with human hands, right? So, what I want you to do now is put yourself in the shoes of the person behind me. If you're over on YouTube, I'm going to show you our beautiful human here, our beautiful Neanderthal. They have just skinned what looks to be some form of deer. Maybe it's a antelope, but the horn assemblage looks to me to be like a deer. And after having skinned this with other members of their band, most likely, as you are this person, you're looking across from you and you're seeing a Homo sapien in your group of probably 4, maybe 5 people, and a Denisovian, and a couple of people who are mixed. There's going to be very few people that are full of one species or another. And as you and your group gather up this kill and take it back, the light is starting to fade from the day, and you have camaraderie and conversation as you're moving. When you get back to your home, you see that the other members of your band have all played their parts in today. You see that those who have gone out and gathered have brought home not only water, but some fresh berries. And you see that the grandmothers who had stayed back with the hearth have made sure that the fire is tended and have cooked some of the legumes, different food matters that we know of, and have made a flatbread already, which we will talk about next week. And that you can mix the berries and the fresh water with that. That you probably only have a couple of small children, maybe a toddler and maybe somebody about 10. You try and keep this space going so that you don't have more than one vulnerable member of your community to protect at a time, right? And so all of you gather in the evening around the fire. You roast up some of the deer that you guys killed that day. You have the scent of the meat that just kind of drools, it seems like, as you're sitting around and you're laughing and you're all starting to art. You're all starting to create, to work on the tools that you need to up your level of survival in the game, and working on the different parts that your whole band, your whole community needs, right? So you're in this space where the walls are decorated already in this wild variation of color from extreme white to extremely dark yellowy orange, right? Next to you is the person that you love the most in the world, right? You guys hope someday to probably have a kid together. The other side of you is your best friend that you've had your whole life. You guys love to hunt together. And this was your kill today, but only because you beat him out. Because yesterday they got the better kill, right? Across from you is grandmother. And she has been, she is the grandmother of pretty much everybody through some way or another within your community. If she has not had her family line passed down to this very eclectic mixed band, anyways, she is adopted, right? She has given them that love. Um, and, some of this eclectic mixed band could have been with you since they were children, right? So as you sit around talking, you decide to go and show today's hunt on the wall, right? Maybe you decide to draw the number of dots that correlate with the number of beings that you saw in that herd before you guys were able to run down this fine animal and kill him, right? Fresh on your lips is the taste and the oil of juicy meat and fresh berries that you've washed down with sweet water. And you are safe and secure and belong in a way that is almost ununderstood today. You are a part. And because apologies, Grandcat. And because animals don't typically come into a space where there's fire, you're not really afraid that the predators are going to get you. You are in a space where nothing's going to harm you. Do we know today that earthquakes happen frequently? Yes. Did they know? Probably not as much, right? Not as much time to experience. And so you feel safe and you feel secure. All of your needs are met. And because all of your needs are met, you're able to create, to do more, to make more, to fine tune your tools, to develop new ones, and to art for the first time, to create a level of thinking that is a step above, to create a belief in something outside of ourselves and the ability to document it, which is the earliest form of our brain shaping into what modern brains are today. The biggest takeaways that I want you to take from this are the feeling of that safety and security in this beautifully lit cavern where the light flickers off the wall and the people you love are there and the food is good and the beds are soft. Took a few furs and a couple of rushes, but they're soft and they're warm and you're safe. Because for so many of us, even if we have a house to sleep in tonight, we know that that can be removed tomorrow. Even if we've bought it and paid for it, we know that the government can decide to change its mind and eminent domain it away from us tomorrow. So this sense of truly deep safety within your space is something we have lost today. And I would invite you to understand that loss of it, well, we might be technologically more advanced in our own minds, actually puts us at way more primitive than those who first created art and first buried their dead, because We've created that lack of safety, whereas other beings worked toward the creation of safety. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions, and we can talk about the art, and then we'll go into jewelry after the questions. And what I typically do is turn on questions for everybody for a while and then turn them on to sub only afterwards so that I can read back through the questions. Ah, thank you. It's trying. It's hoping. Absolutely. I hope everybody's having a grand night. I was able to redo the upload on the Right to Life book. I am I have to figure out how to do an EPUB file, which means I think I have to buy PDF, and I hate Adobe. So I'm trying to figure out how I can do this without Adobe. That's my current for free publication. As soon as I can figure out how to do an EPUB file without Adobe, I have 2 or 3 sites that I can upload them with it. So I'm hoping that I can have it out as a free file relatively soon. I'm also working on Liberty for the next installment. But the goal is to make sure that the next installment is published for free instead of on Amazon as well, so that it's not something that has to be paid for. I did, though, put up a hard copy. The hard copy, I think, is 99 cents as well as what they've got it set as. I want to double check because I realized that I was making some changes today and I might not have gotten that finalized when I was doing it. But they should be all up and ready to go. What kind of stew are you making, honey? I love stew. I don't think that there were as many conflicts between groups. I think that conflicts can always arise, but I think that we had less conflict than we do mixing. Hello, hello. That we actually were more inclined to be communal because I think that we ourselves are more inclined to be communal. Even today, we're less likely to want to harm other people. Usually, if you're somebody who beef and cabbage, usually if you're somebody who enjoys harming other people, we decide that that's because something has happened, right? That there was something within your childhood that traumatized you. And so when we look at that, we see that naturally, and also we also see with a couple of our biological processes and the way that we have children and the way that we raise children, we see that we have to have community. We have something we call obligatory midwifery, and obligatory midwifery means that we have to have somebody help us birth our children. The shape of our pelvis and the shape of the baby's skull and the way that because the pelvis isn't a circle, it's shaped like an oval, but so is a baby's skull, but not front to back, side to side, right? And so you have your infants start facing backwards and you have to turn them a quarter turn to get them out so that they can go side to side out that pelvis. And then because of the way that pelvis is shaped and then the way our bodies are shaped, you have to turn them again so that the shoulders can go through. And but because the pelvis is tilted, right? Sorry, I've got a cat hair somewhere on my nose. It's freaking me out. Um, so because of that, we have to have help in giving birth. We're the only species that we know of. Neanderthal were as well, but they're gone now. We're the only species that we know of that has obligatory midwifery. The other thing that we know is that we are the only species, including Neanderthal, who have 5 life stages from neonate to adult. And those 5 life stages all require intensive care. Only animal on the planet that requires intensive care for 25 fucking years. Everything else goes from, I think the most is elephants are like 5 years, right? Like everything else is a fully grown adult within a couple of years or a day, right? Like snakes never have parenting, right? So I'm still there. Sorry, I swear I'm not doing weird things with my nose. Um, so with that, we see that we require community. You can't raise a singular child by yourself on your own in a Paleolithic time, right? In a pre-culture, pre having an apartment building where you can go and work and there's other people, there's still other people to provide your service, right? Somebody else is still babysitting while you're at work, right? You can't do these things on your own. And because of this, we see that Neanderthal and Homo sapiens really have this need to have community. We absolutely have that way more than we have the need to beat the shit out of each other. And when there's no need to fight over space, you don't fight over space anyways, right? If there's no need to fight over space and you're not fighting over space anyways, um, we do see evidence of human violence, and I have to actually correct myself for people who have heard this before. Um, the Saqqara Cemetery that I had talked about before is a different piece than the one I thought it was. Originally, I had thought of it as a cemetery that is 20,000 years ago. And when I went to look at my dating, I could not find that cemetery again and went to the one that I had seen similar stuff in the similar space within Egyptology. And so I moved that date to 10,000 years. I found the original article in the original space and date today or yesterday. So our first evidence of mass violence or of violence is actually 20,000 years ago at the Saqqara Cemetery in Egypt. And that is several points in 2 bodies in a cemetery. So we do have evidence of violence that goes back 20,000 years, but we don't have any evidence before that in the archaeological record. And it's important to note that these are the same points in time that we start to really become territorial, that we start to have stratification, that we start to have Western agriculture. Okay. And so with that, we absolutely see it's a great statement. We absolutely see with that that violence isn't typical to our species. It isn't a core value to our species. Nurture and community is a core value to our species. Not quite 60 yet. I'm rocking the gray streak, so people will think I am. Most people tend to call me like 25. I think somebody on here called me 17 the other day. 17-year-old star seed with a tattoo on her neck. I was impressed considering I'm in my mid 40s. I'll take all of it. I'm aiming for Crone, though. Crone is where I've been headed for a long time. Anne McCaffrey and Bonnie Ray both have beautiful red hair with that bright gray streak from their right temple when I was a teenager in the early 90s. And that was my goal for life. I was like, that's the hairstyle I want. So why? Because I'm making fun of you're trying to make fun of me? Is that what makes it a parody account? Because I called you out on your bullshit in a kind and sweet manner? I mean, you're right. Sure, scroll on. I know, right? Like some seriously weird shit. Like why your comments aren't even original, but definitely the parody. As long as it gets you to here. King, try harder at what? Trying to look 20? I have no desire to try and look like a child. Try harder at what? Trying not to be amusing? Well, amusement brings knowledge. When people are struck by something or amused by something, they're more inclined to hear. Try harder at not being 60. Got like 15 years to go, but I'm aiming towards it, right? So I know. And that's why I turn off the comments. Um, which discussions on TikTok, Cynthia? I have seen a few. I actually saw some really good ones today. I'm just blocking because it's just easier, and I'm afraid if I ignore him, he's just going to try and then we'll end up with a live ban again. It happens so frequently. Oh my gosh, I'm off it again. Like my account warning is off again. I just muted him. Well, I blocked him, so hopefully he's not there anymore. I'm so sorry. Um, I don't really think that there was a lot of questions though that I was really seeing other than violence and homo, which I think I touched. And it's just that I really don't see violence really coming out until later, right? And I don't see violence coming out until we get to the idea that we need to own land. When we get to the idea that we need to own land, that we possess space, is really where we see that start. And it really starts with that stratification idea. The Clovis. The Clovis are one of the early peoples here in Turtle Island, but they're not the earliest people here in Turtle Island. And they're known for a very specific style of point that they use, which is a gorgeous flute-looking point. Not trying to find one. I'm trying to find my fidget spinner, which I do not know where I put. Okay, so if there are no more questions on the art, then let us go to the jewelry, because I agree. I'm totally down for the jewelry. I'm going to give it just a hot second, though, to make sure that there are no more questions on the art itself. For those who do not know, the elements that are used are ochre. Ochre is this kind of clay element in earth. It's oxidized iron that's kind of dissolved down into an earth element itself. And some cave art, though I'm not sure if we see it specifically in Neanderthal cave art, also uses charcoal. I had the fidget spinner. I had it. Had it. ADD. What is distinct about Western agriculture? Western agriculture takes the entire biome and removes it and then tries to replace it with a singular thing, and tries to control that singular thing. That's really the big difference, because when you're trying to live and grow in a biome where all the things are removed, think today, right? Okay, so if I were to walk outside today, I would not find all the things that I need to live. Okay. I'm not going to find food standing outside in my apartment complex. I'm not going to find the ability to cook food unless I've paid for electricity. I'm not going to find the ability to create clothing, okay, because I don't have the correct plant matter or correct animals in the area to get what I need for that. I'm not going to find the stone that I need to create tools. And I'm not going to find fresh water. Okay. I'm also not going to find shelter that I don't have to pay for. All of these things have been removed from my biome. Okay. All of these things have been removed from the environment itself that I live in. They've been replaced with artificial things. It's that removal of all the valuable nutrients and all the valuable resources, replacing them with artificial ones, and then planting you on top of it and saying thrive. That is the difference between Western agriculture and indigenous agriculture. No, it's all an ochre, and it's because that's the substance that they had. Blue and purple are all later substances that are paint substances that come from animal pigments, usually. In fact, blue and purple are usually pretty specific to a specific shell, um, or mollusk. But the ochre is the predominant, and then you're going to see in some charcoal, but that's, I think, mainly in Homo sapiens. Well, and pastoralism is a little bit different. So, Pastoralism is allowing the indigenous biome to continue to exist, right? And allowing your animals to kind of breed and reign, hey, roam within that biome, right? So that in itself is a little bit, unless you're creating the pastures, unless they're man-made creation pastures, right? Unless you're regulating them, it's not as detrimental to the biome itself, right? And not as detrimental to the products growing within that biome as the removal of all nutrients from the biome, right? Neanderthals absolutely have a language, and they did communicate verbally just like we do. They have a verbal language. All things have a language, including trees and plants and cats and dogs, but they have a verbal language like we do, a verbal syllabic language like we do. We are not sure what it was because we haven't heard them, right? But we do know that they had it from different things. We know it from the imprinting on their brain, of their brain on the base of their skull. And we know it from the hyoid bone, and we know it from the capacity of their chest and the way their lungs and their chest are set up. Yes, invasive animals and bringing in non-native animals, absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn off the comments just so that I'm not distracted, and we'll go ahead and talk. Wow, I'm overheated, I think. And talk of jewelry. I've got to pull my pictures back up. Before we get into jewelry, no, I'll do it after. Okay, so we'll wait until after, and then I'll talk about something else that I've got on my little plate. This is an evidence of jewelry. Let me double check with YouTube that they can still see me and it's giving them at least semi decent view. Okay. And let me get you guys turned around. Got you all up my face, right? Sorry. So what we have here is Homo sapien and Neanderthal jewelry. So on the left is Homo sapien, and on the right is Neanderthal, and these are at the same time periods. What we're seeing here with the Neanderthal, these very thin ones here, these are piercing. These are for piercing. These are like ornaments, like necklaces worn. You can see like the hole here. You can also see there is this wrap area that you get so that you can wrap the leather around the ornament. These are teeth and bone. All of this is teeth and bone. On both Neanderthal and Homo sapiens sides, these are all teeth and bone. This is eagle talons. Neanderthals actually hunted golden eagles. And there's some evidence that they might have hunted with them and kept them as birds of prey. This is a sculpture with lines cross-hatched through it. You can see these lines coming here. And it's most likely that this is bone. You can see kind of this flat surface down here of the bone, how the lines kind of come through. This is the usage of the bone, and then just working with it to get the lines and the feelings of it that you have. This one is one of my favorite. This is vulvas carved into rock. You can see the triangular shape, and then you can actually see lips. And the same thing here. You have this triangular shape and lips, which I just love. I mean, can you imagine this being on the wall of your cave? I'm so down. Which I actually should put that with cave art. Sorry. This is another example of eagle talons. This example is actually showing not only the talon itself, but the leg bone attached, or the claw bone, tarsal. Would it be tarsal or phalange? I think it's the tarsal attached because I think talons belong on feet, not hands. I think claws are feet. I am not an expert on animals, just on how to kill and eat them. And this is a shell that you can see is stained with ochre. It has 2 holes drilled in it, so it's worn as a necklace, and it's either worn as a necklace with this ochre stain as decorative, or maybe it was used to grind or mix ochre so that you could paint the body with it. This is another evidence of Neanderthal-like sculpture and different ornaments. This looks almost like a ring, doesn't it? Like it's a broken ring. These are all bone or stone to my knowledge. I think they're all bone from the looking at them, with the exception of the obvious teeth here. And then that one we'll get back to. So, and that one. When we're looking at Neanderthal art, what we're seeing is identity and expression of self. And we're seeing identity and expression of self in the same way that we're seeing identity and expression of self today. We're also seeing that this identity and expression of self comes at the same time that we're seeing that change in us and in them that takes us to, sorry, I was switching things over. Get you out of my way, face. That takes us to that time and space where our brains are changing into esoteric, a belief in something other than us, a belief that we're more, right? That's that belief that we have today. We see that as we're doing this, Neanderthals are doing this at the same time. And we see these early expressions of jewelry and these early expressions of painting of the body, because we also see that they're using ochre to paint their bodies, to decorate shells, to decorate clothing. These early expressions are identity. These are our earliest expressions of what identity is, right? These are earliest expressions of, sorry, baby, let me take your face. I belong to the eagle clan, so I wear eagle talons. I belong to the red ochre clan, so I wear red ochre face paint, right? I belong to this band, so this is the signaling and identity that I have. We're also going to see that these signaling and identities are going to also be somewhat individualized, but a little bit less individualized than we have them today, right? Because we're still in that very communal space. It is not about the me, it is about the we. And as long as it maintains that we structure instead of that me structure, it is about identifying your group as a whole, not about identifying yourself, right? You have the need to at this point. But we definitely see these as the earliest expressions of identity that we have, those earliest expressions of this is who I am. This is how you should relate me. Whether you're relating me as a group or relating me as an individual is not what's important. It is that you are relating me, that as I walk up, you see, right? Like today, as I walk up, you see I'm a little strange. Got some piercings, got some tattoos. But people who know that this is Oam, right? People who know different flowers might know the different meanings within these, right? These are significant. These are signals to people that this is who I am and this is what I value. It is the same thing when it is your group and your band that is giving those signals off. We see the usage of bear talons or bear claws, eagle talons, corvid talons, and bones from all of those. We see shells of all varieties, many that make some form of beads. We saw circular carvings that I was showing you. We see piercings. And we see feathers. We see that feathers are actually used in a wide variety and abundance, mainly though from birds of prey like corvids and the golden eagles. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting all of those really before I go into one more thing that I want to talk about. I think so. So the next thing I want to talk about kind of goes back to language. We have recently discovered that we believe that Homo sapiens wrote way earlier than they were thought to have previously. An amateur, I don't even think he's an amateur archaeologist. He's out doing something else, and he was out exploring and saw dots and realized that these actually are correlating as documentation, right? So as we're looking through different things with Neanderthals, we're starting to see some of the same evidence within Neanderthals. And those are the things that I want to go over in this last part. The first one that I'm going to pull up, I can't pull up the whole picture, so we're going to be stuck with an article. But this is in France, in Bordeaux. And this is flint. Now, for those who don't know, when you knap flint, you find that napping, or before that napping, you have this surface part. And as you nap it, this surface part disappears. You know, you become this basically, though this does have that surface part because it's a sideways view. But you can actually see in this where this is the surface here, right? And this is where the nap off comes. This is what we believe to be evidence of symbolic accounting on this piece of flint. This looks like 3 mountains almost. And this is scratched by Neanderthal. And this is deliberate. This is one of the first things that we're looking at as a form of possible communication through symbolism within Neanderthal. The next ones that we're looking at is this. And I think for most people, this one is a little bit easy to see and understand. Why? As you look at this is bone. You can see clearly. Well, first, let me get it a little bit larger at first so that you can see down here. We're looking here, this here, and these here. These are where you're removing the meat from the bone. And as you're removing the meat from the bone, your knife hits or your teeth hit, okay? But these here clearly bunched into 4 and 2 and 1 and 1 with what looks like the start of another one all look to be a symbolic accounting, a symbolic marking of numbers. These are all deliberately marked into this bone. And as you can see with the way they're clustered, it's almost like they're counting how many you have. You almost could see where you're going to get that slash here to make this 5, right? And this is my favorite. This is attributed currently to Homo sapiens. The reason they attribute it to Homo sapiens is they say that Neanderthals didn't work with dots in their art at all. But as we've seen with a lot of the cave art, Neanderthals absolutely work with dots in their art. This was found among Neanderthal remains during a Neanderthal time period. They have decided it is Homo sapien because, again, they decided Neanderthals didn't work with dots. For anybody who has looked at archaeology, or not archaeology, astrology, or the other thing having to do with the stars, you might know that you can do a, I can't remember words sometimes. You can track the sun or the moon's movements in this specific pattern here. This specific symbol or shape has been used for as long as we've understood it, including in this, which is 45,000 years old, has been used to track the passage of the moon. This specifically shows us when your full moons and your new moons are going to happen. This is the cycle of the moon. And this would absolutely show Neanderthals having the ability to not only document, but understand the passage of the moon cycles. The understanding seems like it should be, I mean, like, duh, like that's almost a duh to me, but um not just the understanding, but to be able to track it, right? To be able to not just see it and understand it, but to be able to document it so that others can see it and understand it and track it, which in itself is significant. So this is what I have on the jewelry. There's not a whole lot out to find, unfortunately, when it comes to jewelry and stuff like that. Um, a lot of it is because most stuff is still argued, right? And a lot of times you'll find articles, but the pictures are not Neanderthal stuff. And I want to make sure that I'm not showing you Homo sapien pictures of stuff that, I'm claiming are Neanderthals and they're actual Homo sapiens. But I would encourage you on the widdaord.com site, there is a this week, and there are all of these pictures that I was able to up there. And I would also encourage you to go and seek out some more of this. The art and language information I have is being transferred over currently. So check back within the week or so and you'll find more. But the wealth of identity and expression and understanding that we see within Neanderthals speaks to the wealth of identity and expression and understanding in early Homo sapiens, because we all got this from mixing together. We lived side by side in two caves, a 5-minute walk from each other, for 100,000 years in the Levant. Communally, it's where we made our great strides, our great leaps forward. And I think that it's where we started getting the brain development that we have, right? And with these strives and these great leaps forward, we have to understand that it is when you have two boxes that don't understand each other that meet, that each is able to think outside the box and see a new way. When you have two cultures that meet and one is not trying to dominate or control the other, is where the greatest amount of advancement of species comes, especially for Homo species. Let me go ahead and open it up again for questions. These Neanderthal chats are very short, it seems, mainly because we're not speaking on a whole wealth of information, unfortunately. Oh, shit. I'm sorry. I turned on sub only by accident. I'll turn it off as soon as it'll let me. It won't let me. It doesn't like me. Says no. TikTok hates you. Give me a second and I will try it again because it says I have to wait a minute because I did it too fast. And then I will make sure that everybody has a opportunity to comment. The writing in the caves is so exciting. I'm really fascinated by that. You're talking about that Homo sapien one that you had sent me as well, right? That one's really fascinating. And that makes total sense to me. It looks absolutely like documentation. And not only does it absolutely look like documentation, but like I constantly say, we've known shit much longer than we think we've known shit. The Indonesians absolutely built a pyramid. It just didn't take a master race to teach them. They were smart enough on their own. I think the ones tracking the period cycle. Yeah, that's not okay. So the calendar marks are considered writing. They're considered a documentation. They're just saying that it's Homo sapiens, not Neanderthals. But it's found among Neanderthals. That's what it's weird for me. And they're still debating whether or not Neanderthals are actually writing. Like I can show you this and I can go, some of us think, and this is what it looks like. Comment should be on. Some of us think, and this is what it looks like, but there's always going to be those old stodgers who are like, nope, nope, nope. We're the best. We're the best. We're the pinnacle. Don't take away my pinnacle because I must be the pinnacle. Yeah. So, you're going to see that we see it with like the 3D mastodon find. We see it with really everything. There is always a contingent that's arguing that it's impossible because it really damages their white supremacy. Absolutely. Oh, I felt like that since I got out of it. Like I grew up off grid and then, came into the city and went, what the fuck? Can I go back? Like I remember like being a teenager and being in a treatment center and just like crying. Like I just can't I go back. I can't handle this. I would rather be, in the middle of the woods. Thank you, Christy. It absolutely makes sense, doesn't it, Extra? So, Elrico, we don't know what sounds like measuring from the voice box because we don't have the voice box. We've only got the hyoid. But we do know that their ear, uh, oh, I know the word and I can't think of it. There's a little portion in your inner ear, and that was tuned to the same sounds as ours is. So we can assume that they're making the same sound patterns that we are because their ear is tuned to the same sounds that we are. And we all had awesome memories too until we took it away with writing. When we did everything based on memory, our memory was better because of the fact that we memory is like a muscle. When you build it, it works better, right? And so when we were building the memory muscle a lot more instead of replacing it with writing, they actually are saying now that Google has like almost eradicated like long-term storage of memory. Like we're really losing our long-term storage of memory because you can Google it, which writing had the same effect because you could document it, you could forget it, right? And when you can document it and you can forget it, you can no longer, you find that you no longer need to remember it. So we lose that hold of memory, right? Or just protection from the elements. I think I missed the first part of that comment, Jelly. I got or just protection from the elements. I'm not sure what was before the or. I'm not sure what you think isn't true. What I said about memory, we do know that people who come from cultures who didn't do writing, like we know that the Druids and the Widda had writing, they just refused to use it for anything of substance. You could write to your neighbor, but you couldn't use writing for anything of substance because of the fact that using writing decreased memory, right? So I can't talk about ADHD and its relation to earlier species. I don't know enough on the subject. This is Tom Borkland. Tom Borkland is on Insta and Twitter. Same spelling, though probably not the umlauts over the O. Um, and he does a bunch of beautiful Neanderthal art. The Google study, I was talking not mainly about the Google study, I was talking about studies prior that aren't really studies, they're indigenous knowledge, like Celtic indigenous knowledge. I just stated that currently the Google study coming out tells us, but we've already known that writing decreases memory retention. Writing isn't more accurate than memory, though. And this is why, because writing is written by somebody who's not getting fact checked, okay? And memory, when you are in memory based cultures like the Druids, which is a great way to go back to because so much is known with this, what you're taught is in 3-line stanzas that are taught in an iambic or rhythm that is memory retentive. And you're not taught the next until you know that one. And it's not a game of telephone. I'm teaching you. Okay. And so as I'm teaching you, I teach you roses are red, violets are blue. So are you, right? And I teach you that until you remember roses are red, violets are blue, so are you. Roses are red, violets are blue, so are you. You're not dropping any of those words. You're reciting it back to me word for word. And once you have that, I add the next, and I add the next, and I add the next. Now, that piling it on top is increasing and building your memory, but you're retaining it all word for word because you've memorized it. Writing reduces memory because instead of having to memorize it, You write it down and walk away from it. You don't have to teach it to somebody and have them hold on to that memory, right? And so we see that because you're not working that muscle, memory is reduced. We like to think of oral traditions and histories as a game of telephone, but in truth, they are not. Really, written is way more a game of telephone, because if you look at it, take the Bible. Nobody reads the Bible in Hebrew, right? Nobody reads the Bible in Hebrew. If you're Hebrew, you read the Torah in Hebrew, but you're not reading the Bible in Hebrew because you don't give a shit about the Bible, right? So nobody reads the Bible in Hebrew, but that's what it was written in Aramaic, right? So they've translated it, and in the translation, they've changed words. Homophobia is not in the Bible. There is nothing against having sex with another adult male. There is everything against being pedophilic, because the Romans were pedophiles and so were the Greeks. And the Judaic people were like, nah, that's not okay, right? So there's nothing that says anything about not lying with another man. It says you can't lie with a teenage boy, right? And because that got translated initially by the Romans, who didn't want to lose their pedophilia, and gets translated, right? You see that the original text has been translated out of all of its original meaning. It is absolutely a game of telephone with written text, way more than it is with oral histories. Do I think the problems with written languages outweigh the benefits? I don't find a problem with written language. I just think that written language shouldn't be the basis and shouldn't be the baseline. That we should understand that there are faults and problems with written language that don't exist in oral tradition. And stop ignoring any historic knowledge, because history means written story, but any knowledge of who we were that is not written down, because we ignore everything that is not written down. We say it was a game of telephone, right? And so I think that I don't find it to be a problem. I just find that we need to understand that it is not the pinnacle of validity, right? If we can understand that it is the ultimate game of telephone and that it is not oral tradition that is the ultimate game of telephone, then maybe we can at least understand that oral tradition has value. And once we can understand oral tradition has value, we can acknowledge the fact that Western science is constantly proving oral tradition to be true, right? And so to me, that's the importance of it. It's not about written being bad. It's about stop calling oral bad, right? You can write anything you don't want down. Just understand that anything written down is propaganda written by one person who didn't get fact checked and has been translated. Yes, and it all exists within the context it's in. But if it exists in a context as 200 years ago and I'm translating it today, I don't understand the context. So when I translate it, I pervert it. They wear clothing because we were wearing clothing before them. Homo erectus is wearing clothing. We know that clothing goes back at least 500,000, probably more like, I think that they've decided at 700,000 years old at least for clothing. And they see it in Homo erectus first. How will we tell the stories of our past? For one, when something is told to you in a story form and spoken, it has a higher ability to retain memory. If you're reading a book, it doesn't retain as much as hearing a story that engages you. So my words with that is that we need to utilize the new tools that we have, like video, and start telling stories instead of writing them down. Yes, history and culture and songs and song cycles. And the development of clothing comes because we don't have body hair and we need to stay warm. I consider all forms of writing to be considered anthropomorphized propaganda. I mean, I think that even myself as an author, everything I write down with an intent, right? Everything I write down with the intent to get you to understand something I'm trying to get you to understand. And that's the same for every author. That's the same for every speaker. That's the same for everybody who comes out here and says shit. Um, it's easier to understand those things when it's sparking, right? When it's live, when it's interactive, when it's not dull, when your brain doesn't kind of go, oh, it just read 500 words and I can remember and 3 times, right? Like for me, it's about the understanding that to teach, to impart knowledge, you need to spark interest, catch and hold, bring it in, right? That's why I think clickbait is perfect for knowledge as we move forward. Like, I think clickbait is the perfect teaching tool as we move forward. If I can spark your interest in 15 seconds and bring you in, and you're actually not having to deal with all those ads, you're going to be happy, right? Like, I think clickbait is the perfect tool for education because if you can spark it and bring it in and then not clickbait it, right? You've just baited, but you're providing what you said you would, right? I think it's really, that way to, because we have developed recently this 15-second kind of thing, right? If it doesn't catch us within the first 15 seconds, God, if it takes that long for some of us, for me, if it takes that long, and I love, books and I love to read and I always have, but even then, like, we've developed this space in our society that if it's not something that we can be caught in quickly, then we're not sticking around for it. Yeah, it has to be a book that you are just like, sorry, can't put it down. Doctor's appointment out the door. Taking to the bath with me. Sorry, that's it, right? Isn't it propaganda to believe that animals should be used as stock? Buys into the Western agricultural system that's kind of killing us off. So in that, yeah, it would be part of that, right? I'm reading comments, sorry. Speciesism. Well, I mean, what about speciesism, May? Just to ask. Haha, I can actually go off camera without that thing following me. I don't know if I can get far enough off for what I want, though. I'm going to step away for 2 seconds. Go ahead and continue typing, and I will read it when I come back, but I have to medicate, and I can't do that on camera. 1 second. We're absolutely still evolving, but we're not going to evolve into different species. Yes, speciesism is to look at them like they're products. You are so right. Don't even think you're coming in with your. This kind of art. So, Neanderthals have been shown as dark skinned and therefore primitive in the past for races means absolutely. But this kind of art also teaches us that not all Neanderthals were light of skin. And we're talking about how Neanderthals weren't primitive and how we are currently way more primitive than the Neanderthals were. We also talk a lot about anti-race theory and anti-racism in here. Um, it's not the focus tonight. And I do know, and most people within my community know, that in the past, archaeology and anthropology, which is a very racist field and was developed with racism in mind, um, to justify the atrocity of the Europeans, and to kind of give rise to their own feelings of superiority, that archaeology and anthropology was kind of developed to further that, right? And so we have seen in the past that Neanderthals were actually uh, depicted as being brutes, hunched over, dark skinned, and hairy, as associating them as being primitive and associating dark skinned people as being primitive. But there's nothing primitive about this picture. This person is obviously human. I have a couple of them that I use from Tom Borklin because I really love his artwork. And what I really love about this is the fact that the membrane across the deer or the animal that this person is killing looks like the membrane looks when you're skinning an animal. And the color schemes within this, not the person's skin color, but the background and the fur, and then the white and the red of the animal in the front is really impactful. And I also really like pictures that draw people in, because then you can hear. And you can hear that we are all nurturing and communal and creative, that Neanderthals were not primitive, and that what is in fact primitive is this disconnected society that we live in today, right? And this might be an AI generated. The Tom Borklin art that I've seen before was not, but this is a different style of Tom Borklin's art. It does look a little bit more like it could be AI generated than some of his other stuff. But, you know, I'm not sure if it is or not. But one thing about Tom Borklin's art is that he is one of the people who started introducing light skinned Neanderthals. And he is one of the few people that actually you see a lot of light skinned Neanderthals in his work. Um, we also understand that Neanderthals' skin color being lighter is not probably even my light, that it is going to be a darker shade of light, right? Because you're not living in the extreme Nordic climates like Norwegians are or Scandinavian people are for the extended period of times that they are. And we see that even Homo sapiens do not become light skin in those areas until well later. Like we see that Europeans become about 50% white or light at about 5,000 years ago. And in Scandinavia, even at about 2,000 years ago, you're going to see that you're looking at 70 to 80% of the population. And even in the sagas, you see that roughly 10% of the population is dark of skin naturally. The people that settled the European areas, this is going to pause me. La, da, 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 la, da, da. Oh, let it pop over. Did it not pop over? Oh, crap. Hold on. Sorry, it might pause me again. I'm not sure why it didn't pop up. It's not. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is a Kenneth and Kenneth image. This is Cheddar Man. This is who settles Europe. For those here, this is Cheddar Man. He's extremely dark. The alleles for his skin color are actually documented as being sub-Saharan, right? So this is what settles Europe. All light-eyed and dark-skinned. And it stays that way. Is it going to pop over? It's been having a hard time. Well, they think with it's having a hard time tonight. I don't know why my phone is being such a pain. I apologize, everybody. Ha, there you go. I don't know why it's doing that tonight. Um, they think that uh, we need the lighter eyes before we need the lighter skin, because the lighter eyes are a low light adaptation. And we're still getting vitamin D because you can get vitamin D from other elements within the environment. Uh, so the vitamin D lack in the sun isn't the first effect, right? It's effective, but it's not the first effect. And so we do see the retention of dark skin. Yeah, he's Britain. And you know what? His direct descendant, 300 generations after him, is a mile from where they found him. Lives a mile from where they found him. Born a mile from where they found him. Lived a mile from where they found him his whole fucking life. And he is 300 years or 300 generations his direct descendant. And the people, the group of people that he was a part of, the mitochondrial DNA that he was a part of, actually is like 10% of the European population, right? But we do see that vitamin D is coming in other spaces, so the lighter skin is coming afterwards. And again, our idea of light is Scandinavian, which is 200 generations, 300 generations working within that, not 300. It'd have to be 250 generations because Scandinavia is starting to be settled at 7,000 years ago, right? So we're looking at several hundred generations staying in a specific area, which doesn't happen in species before this, right? And we're seeing that several hundred generations is getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. It's not like it stopped getting lighter, right? And so that's why we're seeing that we're getting the ultralight skin that we're seeing today, but we're not seeing that ultra light before. Of course, there are going to be times that you see it. It is just not going to be common. It's going to be more of a rarity, just like the ultra dark is going to be more of a rarity with the Neanderthals, right? Variation happens, right? They know that the gene and the alleles for light skin goes back 900,000 years. Congratulations, Tim. Next generations are wonderful and beautiful. We see that, well, there are the recessive genes for light skin and dark skin that you're seeing that overall it's not going to be extremely light any more than it's going to be extremely dark. And you're going to see that Neanderthals, like Homo sapiens at this time, and like Denisovians at this time, are all breeding and all mixing together and all living together and all taking part together. And they're all different colors because Homo sapiens are just coming right out of Africa. And Neanderthals have been in Europe. And Denisovians have been in Asia. And they're all together and they're all hunting and they're fucking and they're playing and they're having fun and they're teaching each other and they're a part of society and they're creating a society. They're creating the first really multicultural society that we have, right? And in this creation, we're seeing that you're going to get that blending and that mix, meaning that you're going to see your first light-skinned Homo sapiens starting to be more predominant, right? It's starting to become more of a dominant gene and more prevalent within your society, just like you're going to see dark-skinned Neanderthals starting to become more predominant and prevalent. Denisovian DNA can still be found today. We see Denisovian DNA in Asia, the southeastern part, and I hear different things at different times. So I'm going by what I know, but these change. Okay, so my current knowledge is in Southeast Asia, the islands of the South Pacific, um, and the highest percentage being toss up between Australia or certain islands in the South Pacific, and Turtle Island indigenous people. And it is, in fact, the presence of Denisovian DNA in Turtle Island indigenous finds from pre-contact that is telling us That's in Turtle Island, indigenous people. Turtle Island is North America. I use an indigenous terminology. In Turtle Island, indigenous people were seeing pre-contact that Denisovian DNA is there, which is starting to take a look at a southern boat route um, through the South Pacific of a way of populating the Turtle Islands. The Turtle Island dating and population has been pushed back to 33,000 years ago by Homo sapiens, and there are finds that indicate Homo erectus was here 130,000 years ago, and likely species here. Uh, Denisovian DNA is the Denisovian or the DNA I was just talking about in the presence of. I think that all of our myths of elves and dwarves and giants come from the population we see around us. Island giganticism and island dwarfism is a thing. And we absolutely see island dwarfism in the hobbits, the Homo florensis species, and in the dwarves, the Homo lonzensis species. And we absolutely see some evidence that there could have been island giganticism in Turtle Island with the Homo erectus species. Um, that is me taking knowledge that I have from many different sources and stating my personal opinion of what all of that knowledge combined means. There has not been study on that because of the fact that most of the evidence that was had has disappeared because early archaeologists were grave robbers. A lot of people want to think that Homo sapien and Neanderthal are in contact or conflict, but um, the person who taught me was or is still Dr. Melanie Chang, one of the foremost paleoanthropologists, and her thought process is that all evidence really points to living together, community. There's not evidence of violence between the two species. There is absolute evidence of uh, living side by side in two caves in the Levant for 100,000 years in a 5-minute walk from each other, right? And mixing our tool usages and learning new tool usages from each other and things like that, right? We also know that because of the way two species breed, so we know that we know that we are a species and all one species because if person A and person B get together, they can breed. If one of them can't breed, person A or person B, the other one can typically breed with others, right? Um, of the same group, right? And so it's a singular infertility, not a cross species infertility. We know when something is two different species when the majority of the pregnancies, first of all, there are not a lot of pregnancies, and the majority of the pregnancies are not viable, and the majority of their survival through pregnancy into infancy or into an adulthood is infertile, meaning that not only can it not breed with others like it, but it can't breed with anybody else either. As opposed to um, it not only can it not breed with others like it, but nobody else that's like it can breed with anybody else, right? Um, so, like a mule is because a donkey and a horse have a common equine ancestor. That what we call last common ancestor gives these two different species that are descended from a same ancestor the ability to breed. This is what happens with Sapien erectus and Denisovian. And we actually have 5 other ghost species we see in different Homo sapien DNA that indicates that there were 7 total species that we were actually breeding with. The ghost species are species we see a fingerprint of in the DNA, but we don't know what the whole species is. We haven't found a whole genome. We haven't found them in the fossil record that we've known of. And we haven't we don't know enough, right? We just have a little fragment of them, maybe the color of their hair, right? So to get those percentages when you are two different species and most of your offspring is infertile, you have to breed a whole hell of a lot to get the one that is fertile. So every once in a while, a mule will be fertile. It has to breed back to either a donkey or a horse. I can never remember which equine, but it has to breed back to specific of the parent species. Like it is the same specific of the parent species, and it is always female. Um, we see that when we breed with Neanderthals and Denisovians, that the resulting offspring come from Neanderthal females and sapien males, because we see no Neanderthal Y DNA. And we know that the resulting offsprings that are able to pass on their DNA therefore come from this combination. And not only do we know that we know they come from this combination, but we know that it is only a female offspring that is going to be able to be fertile and pass on those DNAs. So we know for the amount of Denisovian, there was a study that was done that gave numbers to the amount of Denisovian DNA in Turtle Islanders, quantifying it in the time of interbreeding that would have had to have happened in years to create that amount. Denisovian DNA in Turtle Islanders is one of the smaller percentages. It is 0.02 to 0.03 percentage. At 0.02 to 0.03, we know that Turtle Island indigenous people had to breed for 10,000 years with Denisovian. So 10,000 years to get 0.02. And for Neanderthal DNA, we have between 1% and 5% for everyone on the planet outside of two spaces. The Oyo population of West Africa, geographically challenged. This part is West, right? And the Khoisan people of South Africa. Those are the only two spaces that don't have Neanderthal DNA, and those two groups of people have three other ghost species within them. They have 3 of the 5 that we were talking about. Indigenous Australians and Turtle Island Indigenous are the other places that we see a ghost species. So, hello everybody. So with that, we absolutely see that there is a long period of mixing. There's not evidence of fighting. We don't see an archaeological evidence of fighting. We don't see really anything that evidences that we were doing anything other than, hey, dude, what's up? What does it look like over there? How do you hunt over there? What's the best way to live over there? And hey, that girl looks hot, right? Do we know why Homo species survived over the others? So we talk about this often, I think, as a society. We have this idea that we survived longer than the other species. The Neanderthals started at 600,000 years ago. We are 300,000 years old, which means Neanderthals were 300,000 years old when we were born, right? And they lived for another 270,000 years. And currently their DNA is in all of us. There's more of their DNA on the planet now than there was when they were a species whole, because we believe that there is only 500,000 of the species through the 570,000 years of their existence, that there was only 500,000 of them as a whole because of the lack of genetic diversity within the species. And so it's thought that it was that lack of genetic diversity that leads with breeding with us, and is why that they don't actually die out. They just carry on in us. But it's not about a mass extinction. It's about a lack of genetic diversity. We currently have proof that they almost went extinct twice. And that the times that they went extinct, we see that it's bad in here, isn't it? I don't even know if I have mods. I'm sorry, I wasn't paying any fucking attention. Give me a second, too. Okay. I apologize. I don't have any. I don't know who's modding or who's able to mod. And even if there are people able to mod, it's a lot when it becomes like that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it to subscribers only so that subscribers can comment. If you would like to comment and you would like to not have to subscribe, you can go to the YouTube. Currently, it's little old me. I have the new one up. At Widda is the YouTube I'm streaming on. I'm trying to switch channels so it's no longer what it was. So I have like 30. I have to remove half of them to add anybody, it seems like. So I don't know if I can add anybody to mod. No, you're fine, Ducray. And it's not that you should have to. Nobody should have to police them. They're being assholes. Nobody should have to police assholes. That's, I mean, not my job. Not your labor either. You're on TikTok to enjoy yourself, not to have to deal with people being crappy for whatever reasons they want to be crappy, right? So, you know. I think that it's important to note that we do not see Neanderthals really as dying out. We see Neanderthals as really blending into us as a species and really just becoming a part of us as a species, right? Thank you, Amy. So, oh, you're fine. I just, sorry, I didn't mean to hit you guys down there. If you guys would rather, I can turn it back on for the subscribers who are talking. I can turn it back on. It looked like it had gotten out of hand and I don't want it to be uncomfortable. I know it gets so bad and uncomfortable. I think it's important when we're looking at things. I want to do next. I want to have a. Am I freezing or am I just pausing? Because I was pausing quite a bit. That might be what it is. I should probably not. I want to do a debate, not necessarily a debate, but a discussion, and figure out how we're going to do a discussion. I want to do a discussion on what the right to life is supposed to mean and what the right to life should mean for people. Yeah, I think I was just like freezing myself for a second or two. But I want to do a little bit more of a discussion for him on what the right to life is supposed to mean and what it people's ideas, right? That's one thing that's important to me when we discuss things like that is that I don't know jack shit. Like, I mean, I think I know a good deal about our history and about who we were and about what really makes us tick. And then I think I know places that I can hand the reins, right? Like, I totally think Land Back is the start of it, right? But like different things, I think that there are other people out there with ideas that supersede mine that have greater worth because they're focused on different things. Somebody who studies architecture is definitely going to understand house space better than I am, right? So I think that I would like to do kind of an open forum discussion on right to life. The problem is if we can do it without it becoming extremely trolly. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to make a way for us to be able to do that. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to be able to touch on with Neanderthals and jewelry or art as I'm sitting here. Because I do think that I've covered most of it. Don't let this be all you know, right? This is the top skim of decades of collecting thought processes and articles that I've seen, or works, or things that I've read, or conversations that I've had that touches this much of the surface. When it comes to art and jewelry and expression within Neanderthals, there is so much more out there. And you can Google it and find images. I would double check that the images that you're finding are dated to before 40,000 years ago, because we consider that to be assured of being Neanderthals and not sapiens, and that they're documented as being Neanderthal. But I would also encourage you to go and look cave art up. Like, oh my God, our houses are ugly. Our houses are ugly. Like, I don't know how we live in this sometimes. Modern housing is bland, right? But I would encourage you to go and look at that. I would also encourage you to go and look at evidence of things like jewelry and tattooing and self-expression within Neanderthals and early sapiens. Tattooing is 35,000 years old to a cave in France, right? I would encourage you to dig deeper into these beautiful, advanced beings. And I think that what I want to do is go back to what we were talking about earlier. When we were looking at pictures of the caves, we saw pictures of rock that is variegated in color from extremely white to extremely dark, like ochre, not ochre as in this substance is being painted on the walls, but like this orangey, mustardy look, right? And this variation is on cave walls that are staglighted. I don't know if that's the correct word. In such a way that sometimes the walls look like clouds. Like sometimes it looks like rolling space, right? And these spaces, I'm going to show just to give everybody the idea again. These rolling clouds, for those of you over on TikTok or YouTube, these rolling clouds here, these lines of work. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You guys can join a chat when I do that thing anyways. That's going to be the hope. I want it to be a space where everybody can discuss. I just have to figure out ways to keep it a little bit less trolly so that it's discussion that is capable without discomfort, right? These are these walls that I'm talking about where you're seeing this wide variation of color, right? Semi-open forum, I think. Only because of the fact that if we make it completely open, we've seen what happens right here, period. Like, it's not that I don't feel that all sides should be heard. It's that I feel that some people aren't expressing themselves in a way that is conducive for communication. Some people are expressing themselves in a way that is conducive for causing issue. Devil's advocates, who are you advocating for? Which devil? Which devil are you advocating, right? So I want it to be free and open. At the same point, I do not want it to be free and open to those who aren't carrying the same desire for communication, right? Awesome. That would be cool. So what I want to talk about is when we were first talking here, I want you to put yourself in the space of this beautiful human behind me. I want it to be the end of your day. And this has been your hunt. You enjoyed this hunt. The weather is kind of moist. And you love the feel of it in your lungs and the way it sits on your skin. It made it easy to move and to hunt. You've got 4 or 5 of your buddies with you because nobody goes everywhere alone. Nobody's stupid. Big animals, right? Besides hunting a big animal, it's easier in a few of you, right? Safer. You wrap this in its hide and you carry it home, laughing and joking. You might even gather different herbs along the way that you know are going to taste delicious on this roast. You might gather berries from the side of the path. You had seen them on your way out and had a couple for lunch, but now you're going to take some home to the kids at home. There's a couple in your band. When you get to your home, it's in the side of a hill, and the world around it is tended garden. It's a berry patch here, and maybe a grass patch that's really good for weaving over there. In front of your entry, it's all beaten dirt, where the footprints of you and your ancestors for the last 100 years have walked and compacted this earth. This has been your home for more generations than you can think. Your band is made up of several different peoples. There's a couple of Denisovians in the mix, Neanderthal to Homo sapien, a couple of people who have a little bit of all of it. And you guys have been in this cave, in this space, for what feels like eternity. You're connected, you understand it. Next to the door, right in the entryway, y'all made sure there were some herbs that settled stomach, just so that you could grab them really quick on those times that it's just not working right, right? As you enter in, you guys have like a toddler, roughly a 10-year-old. You keep your children separated by long enough space that you don't have a lot of vulnerable members of your community. And they're dancing around and playing. And the grandmother of the community is in by her fire. She's tended it through the day while she was teaching the children and telling stories. You guys had some legumes, some grains left over, and so she probably made a flatbread bread during the day and fed the kids. And there's some there on the side, and you're able to grab a quick bite as you guys set up a haunch to cook for the night. You hang the rest of your deer in the far back of the cave, keeps it nice and cool, and it ensures that no predators can smell it. Because of the fire, most predators aren't drawn, and any predator that sees a fire is going to run. That's scary. And as you sit down around the fire to eat, you tell stories of your hunt. And those who went and gathered are talking about how they found a really great tuber patch and dug up a bunch of tubers that are in the fire already cooking. There's water that's fresh. There's a spring that you guys chose running near this cave, specifically this location for that. The kids have wandered down with one of the older members in the afternoon to gather fresh water, and the kids are full of stories of what they saw along the path. And this is the chatter around you as you start to eat what you were able to find today, what you loved as you killed and butchered it because of the honor and life it's giving you and yours. And the walls of your home shimmer and they dance because the light of the fire reflects along this myriad of colors and myriad of depths and shapes. And in this reflection of this myriad of colors and myriad of depths and myriad of shapes that your family has lived in for 100 generations, you are safe and at home in a way nobody today knows. Nobody can take it from you. You know it'll be here tomorrow. You know it'll be here 10 years from now. You feel a sense of security and safety that is nothing primitive. That is, in fact, the foundational thing that we need to be able to art, to be able to conceptualize outside ourselves, and to be able to create. Because it is within that safety and security that that concept that there is an outside of us starts to develop. This is not a primitive group of people. They had art, they had language, seem to have had writing, they had advanced tools, they had medicine. We see that in the plaque and the dentition on their teeth. And actually, food and medicine will be what we start with Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We see that the Neanderthals were human, and not only human, but as connected and apart as we are supposed to be now, that we only see in indigenous communities who have been able to retain this. And in a way that eradicates the depression and loneliness and lack of security that we all suffer from today. I'm going to open it back up for a few minutes, and then I'm going to take off for the night. Again, I will be going live again at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Friday morning, and we will be discussing food and medicine in Neanderthals. Awesome, more people found it over. If you are finding it over to YouTube, please join both channels. There is one tagged on that channel, excuse me, as I am trying to transfer them over. You're currently on my private channel. I'm going to keep it private as I start to go a little bit more public. So I do want to make sure everybody gets transferred over on YouTube. And let me look and see if there's any here. Thank you. Oh, I did publish in Widda Ord on A Right to Life. Paperback copies are $3.58 here in the US. Is the minimum that they will allow me to set it for. I am looking at trying to get. I have found places to. No, I don't want to do that. I have found places to print it for free, to sell it for, not to print it, but to digitize it for free, for sales for free. Not on Amazon, but the problem that I have with that is it needs an EPUB file, and I have to figure out how to EPUB, and I am very computer slow. So I'm working on that, and then I will have the EPUB of the free book. Until then, right now it is 99 cents or free if you have Kindle Unlimited on Amazon. The paperback copy is $3.58. These are the lowest that Amazon will let me set it for. It is on A Right to Life. It is a discussion of what the right to life means and what inalienable means. And I encourage you, if you have the opportunity to read it on Kindle Unlimited, to go ahead and do it. I'm not encouraging anybody to buy it. If people have the ability to buy it, that's awesome. But that wasn't my point. It was not to make you spend money. It's in Widda Ord, just like this name, on A Right to Life. I will have it out as a free copy as soon as I can get this all figured out. I will be publishing the next chapter next month, roughly the same time. And my plan is to have this published for free and to set up a free publication before that, so that I can make sure that the next one goes directly to that as well. Just because it's the free of it, the free aspect is the most important to me. But it is there, and I'm going to do a reading of it and put it up on YouTube as well on the new channel. The inwiddaord.com is up. I'm still migrating things over there, just housekeeping as I'm ending up tonight. And then Friday AM, we will be translating over into Neanderthals, medicine, and food. And hopefully by the end of the week, I'll have everything translated from the link tree over to the website. Yay! Yay! Thank you guys. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Yay. Thank you. Okay, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and go for the night and try and relax a bit. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you for listening to me. It's a sweet feeling to be heard, and I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. Have a great night. Oh, yay. Okay. And I will see you guys Friday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Maybe if I can figure out how to use computers. I'm going to go YouTube. Have a great one. Remember to grab the other channel as soon as I can go live on there. I'll switch it over. Have a great one.